huddled in bare-bone trenches, scratched into the frozen and rocky ground. The Marines of Fox Company, 7th Marine Regiment, brace for an impending assault on the gloomy, bitter night of December 2nd, 1950. For 5 days, 246 men hunkered down on a low mountain overlooking Lake Changjin, known by many today as Chosin Reservoir. Captain William Barber's men have a singular mission: hold back the ferocious and well-planned Chinese nighttime assaults. Cold, wounded, and tired, they have no choice but to fight on. After the Second World War, the Korean peninsula was divided between communist forces in the north and nationalist forces in the south. On June 25, 1950, the better-armed North Korean army invaded the south after a series of border skirmishes. Within weeks, Seoul fell, and communist forces nearly conquered the south. The United States responded with due force. General Douglas MacArthur led a combined Korean, American, and United Nations defense at the Pusan perimeter from August to mid-September 1950. The Incheon landing of September 15th and the recapture of Seoul began a 3-month campaign to push the North Korean forces north of the 38th parallel and then reunite the country. The farther north US and Korean forces marched, the less resistance they faced, which proved to be a trap. President Harry Truman's administration and Douglas MacArthur did not anticipate Chinese intervention, as they assumed that Chairman Mao Zedong would not act without Soviet approval. By late November 1950, over 300,000 Chinese troops had crossed into North Korea and had raced southward to destroy the US and UN columns. Large-scale Chinese intervention derailed Truman's and MacArthur's plan to unify Korea under an anti-communist government. One of the Chinese's targets was the 10th Corps of the 8th U.S. Army, who were part of the Eastern Column racing north toward the Yalu River from Wonsan. Chinese military planners ordered a sweeping pincer movement to trap the leading elements of 10th Corps forces pinned against Lake Changjin. These leading elements of 10th Corps consisted of the 1st Marine Division and Task Force 31, a combat team of infantry and artillery from the U.S. Army's 7th Division. A detachment of British Royal Marines and some 700 South Koreans reinforced the Marine and Army formations as they pushed toward Lake Changjin. General Oliver Smith, commanding the 1st Marine Division, doubted MacArthur's plans. For one, US troops were overextended, and their flanks were exposed. Smith was worried, noting, "I believe a winter campaign in the mountains is too much to ask of American soldiers or Marines. I doubt the feasibility of supplying troops, or providing for the evacuation of the sick and wounded." To the Marines on the ground, troubling signs of a Chinese intervention were quickly becoming apparent as well. On November 2nd, at Sudan Gorge, Marines exchanged fire with small units of well-equipped and spirited Chinese soldiers. Continuing north, they set up a base of operation to the south and west of Lake Changjin and paused to enjoy Thanksgiving dinner on November 23rd. A well-rested soldier is an effective and energetic soldier. But for the Marines of Fox Company, sleep was a luxury that was hard to come by, especially in the freezing foxholes around the Chosin Reservoir. Thanks to the sponsor of today's video, Manta Sleep, a restful night is now within your reach. Manta Sleep is the maker of the world's best sleep masks, all designed to help you sleep deeper and wake up refreshed so you can do more throughout your day. My daily routine can be exhausting, so I was excited to try out one of their sleep masks, and I was thoroughly impressed with the results. Their masks are fully adjustable and crafted from premium materials, offering unmatched comfort and breathability, making them perfect for both short power naps or a full night of sleep. In addition to their sleep masks, Manta Sleep also offers a range of sleep accessories, including pillowcases, bed sheets, and even white noise machines, all designed to help you fall asleep faster and sleep more soundly. Start improving your sleep quality with Manta Sleep today. Support our channel by clicking the link in the description below and enjoy 10% off of your purchase using our exclusive discount code HISTORIAN10 at checkout. Potential disaster loomed. By November 27th, 12 Chinese divisions crept into position to surround the American forces from the western, eastern, and southern parts of the lake. Chinese troops outnumbered American forces 2-1. The communist formations sent to participate in the assault were battle-hardened and fought during the Second World War and the Chinese Civil War. For the Americans and their allies, defending their positions and withdrawing would be no easy feat. Even as temperatures sank to -28 degrees Celsius or -18 Fahrenheit, Chinese morale was high. They hoped to achieve high honor, while Chairman Mao commanded Chinese forces to annihilate all US units they fought. Documents handed to Chinese troops noted that American forces had significant technological advantages. However, the documents boasted that daring action to surround and cut off supply lines would cause the cowardly American soldiers to retreat. Well clad in warm and camouflaged uniforms, Chinese troops favored maneuverability and stealth on foot. They attacked at night to blunt the Americans' artillery and air power advantages. Ridges screened their approach. There were only a few possible escape routes for the defenders. Once engaged in combat, Chinese troops blew whistles and trumpets and clashed cymbals to frighten the defending US forces. When one attack failed, another group took its place and picked up the weapons of their fallen comrades. US servicemen and their allies were in a dicey position. Mountainous terrain limited the use of US tanks for counterattacks or defense. The lake was another obstacle for US troops. They had no boats and could not trust the thickness of the ice to support the weight of encumbered Marines. The two roads that meandered around the lake and connected US forces were narrow dirt paths hewn along the valley floor. Chinese troops quickly cut them off. When waves of Chinese soldiers crashed into American positions, the Marines and soldiers would not be able to reinforce each other. Battling freezing conditions and constant harassment from probing attacks, US forces worked hard to fortify positions west of the lake at Yudam, while Task Force 31 dug in on the east side of the lake at Hudong. During the opening Chinese assaults, the Marines and soldiers fought independently on the nights of the 27th and 28th. On the 28th, the US headquarters at Hagaru came under attack and was surrounded from the east, west, and south. Fortunately for American soldiers, Chinese troops didn't bring heavier weapons, like artillery or tanks, to the fight. But they did continue a rapid, extensive pincer movement, keeping up the pressure. General Smith called on the famous Marine, Chesty Puller, to send a breakthrough force to supply and protect the headquarters. Puller organized a mixed column of infantry and tanks from the Marines, Army, and British Royal Marines. The commander of 41 Independent Commando, Douglas Drysdale, led the task force starting on November 29th. Hurrying their way north through entrenched positions and flanking fire, only a third of the force reached Hagaru. Taking advantage of the commanding heights and hill along the path, Chinese troops rained small arms fire on the column. The pass earned the nickname Hellfire Valley to those who survived it. One British Marine remembered that Chinese mortar and rifle fire ripped through their trucks, wounding or killing the men inside. The resistance forced a third of the task force to fall back to Koto, while the last third were either dead, wounded, or captured. Chinese troops inflicted 300 casualties as the task force barreled into Hagaru. Though Task Force Drysdale reinforced Hagaru, the Chinese 80th Division soundly beat Task Force 31, inflicting 1,000 casualties, killed or taken prisoner. The 1st Marine Division fared better during the first phase of the battle. Fox Company's heroics secured the dirt road leading to safety. Securing the makeshift path would allow the 8,000 Marines of the 1st Marine Division, pinned down northeast of Fox's position, to retreat. The company itself had to be relieved under trying circumstances. Around 10 p.m. on December 2nd, during another assault on Fox Company's position, chaos erupted behind Chinese lines. On a rocky ridge to the northeast, a relief column of U.S. Marines, led by Lieutenant Chuan Lee and Lieutenant Colonel Ray Davis, crested the heights and attacked the Chinese troops' rear, marching secretly, sometimes within 30 meters of the enemy before engaging them. Davis and Lee's troops earned the nickname the Ridge Runners for their exploits. By the morning of December 3rd, the beleaguered Fox Company was relieved. Sound positioning and artillery fire defended their positions until the bulk of the Marines withdrew from Udom to Hagaru by December 4th. Air power facilitated their defense, supply, and eventual retreat from Udom to Hagaru. Fighter squadrons from offshore U.S. Navy carriers, Marine Air Group 33, the U.S. Air Force, and the Royal Australian Air Force scrambled to support the ground troops. Corsairs, Sky Raiders, and Mustangs strafed and bombed exposed and tightly packed Chinese assault columns. Pilots dropped napalm to deter continued attacks or dislodge entrenched Chinese troops blocking the way out. Cargo planes landed supplies and evacuated the wounded and dead from Hagaru. Though less exposed to the elements or enemy fire, U.S. and Allied pilots risked their lives and suffered casualties. One notable loss was the death of Ensign Jesse Brown, a U.S. Navy African-American officer and pilot. In his Corsair, he and his 6-fighter flight provided close air support to the Marines fighting around the lake. In the course of his mission, his plane took small arms fire and crashed. Brown's wingman, Thomas Hudner, intentionally crashed his plane to rescue the trapped pilot. Hudner's efforts were in vain, however, and Brown died in the twisted Corsair. Despite great sacrifices, another challenge loomed to the south. To leave Hagaru, the remaining Marines and soldiers had to march through the narrow valley on a service road that led to a rescue at Hamhung Port. Though U.S. commanders left garrison forces at key settlements along the route to the lake, Chinese units blocked the way south. The Marines left Lake Changjin behind and marched 18 kilometers, or 11 miles, south to Koto on December 4th. The mauled Chinese divisions that assaulted U.S. forces around the lake paused to regroup and resupply. The fresh Chinese divisions stalked the heights and hills along the road south, harrying any U.S. forces they contacted. Snow and wind whipped the long retreating column. The 5th Marine Regiment guarded the kilometers-long convoy, while the 7th struck out into the hills to suppress enemy attacks. Once again, U.S. and Australian aircraft swept the gorges and passes, suppressing ambushing troops. Tanks pushed over roadblocks, and artillery fire covered U.S. advances. Though they made steady progress, it was still rough going. Every hill, every twist in the road, and even every building seemed to harbor enemy forces waiting to strike. By December 8th, U.S. technological and logistical prowess still faced its most significant challenge on the march to safety at the port of Hamhung. On reconnaissance flights, Marine Chief Engineer John Partridge observed that Chinese forces from the 60th Division partially destroyed a concrete bridge that spanned a deep chasm. The retreating U.S. troops had 1,000 vehicles that needed a bridge to cross the Funch Island Pass, some 60 kilometers or 37 miles north of the port. General Smith refused to abandon the convoy. Their artillery, equipment, supplies, and wounded could only be transported by vehicle once they abandoned Hagaru. The Chinese 60th Division was also entrenched nearby, sniping engineers and laborers repairing the bridge. The plan was twofold. Marines would fight the 60th Division and allow the engineers to rebuild the bridge. The combat troops held up their end of the plan. They fought uphill to protect the Marine and Army construction efforts in the valley below. Partridge and his staff had no bridge building supplies, but improvised a daring solution. On December 9th, 11 U.S. Air Force cargo planes dropped prefabricated bridge sections to waiting engineers below. Enough sections were intact for the Marines to work through a blizzard, repairing the bridge under enemy fire. One particular difficulty was buttressing the supporting pillars on the valley floor. Using wood beams, dirt, and even the bodies of enemy soldiers killed in action, the treadway could support Marines on foot and the vehicles rolling along. With the bridge completed and the Chinese forces at bay, surviving Marines and soldiers hobbled their way to Hampton. The badly mauled, hungry, and tired Chinese divisions slowed their ambushes. On December 11th, the survivors of the Battle of Chosin reached the port and were eventually evacuated by sea on December 15th. American forces survived to fight another day. However, it was clear that this was still a severe defeat. Task Force 31 was practically destroyed, and Chinese troops forced the remaining soldiers and Marines from their positions. Though effective in blunting Chinese attacks, U.S. air power and firepower didn't stop them entirely. The Communist forces pressed the attacks relentlessly and adapted well to U.S. tactics. After the sunny outlook of the previous 3 months defeating North Korean armies, the Battle of Chosin Reservoir foreshadowed a long conflict with Chinese forces.